to our interview with REVEKKA, founder of Axiom of Purpose. Today we're going to dive into the world of branding, design, marketing, and public affairs, specifically for government contractors. Initially in this interview, we covered branding and design. Next, we talked about strategic planning and performance analytics. We really nerded out here. Finally, we covered public affairs and community outreach. So sit back and enjoy this interview with REVEKKA from Axiom of Purpose. Tell us a little bit about you and your work history. What led to launching Axiom of Purpose?
Absolutely. I guess I'll start at the beginning. So I was in college and planned to go into campaign work and had a major in communications, a minor in political science, and was all ready to go into the political and or government space. And then took a 10-year detour. I started as an intern for Disney because I thought it would not hurt to get Disney on my resume. And so I spent 10 years as a field publicist for different movie studios, DreamWorks, Universal, Paramount, you name it. And I had a blast doing it. But after 10 years, I decided that I really wanted to go back to my first love and moved into the government space. So started at the city and county of Denver, was there for 7 years altogether. I started in public works, handling communications for the Public Works Department, and then went to the mayor's office and handled a ton of speech writing during the Democratic National Convention of 2008, and then moved into Denver Human Services and was there as the director of communications and community relations for 4 years, working with the entire city and state on different projects that supported the community. I then went on to rejoin the mayor, who became the governor of Colorado and was the director of communications for the lieutenant governor of Colorado at the time, and spent a year at the Capitol. And then I moved home to San Diego. And so I was at the Port of San Diego for 5 years. They have a centralized marketing and communications department. So we worked on all kinds of campaigns, from everything from public safety to cargo to parks and you name it. And then spent the last 3 years consulting for government and other clients in the marketing and communications space. So I've just really spent my career in the majority of my career in this public sector space, which I call the purpose sector, because I think that there is a whole lot of really meaningful work that happens in the government. We are serving community, and we are not always given the reputation of being a community-focused organization in the public sector. And so Axiom of Purpose is really about the idea that purpose is part of the public sector as well. And we are always serving people, community, and planet in that space.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I have to just say, wow, that's a lot of professional history. I'm surprised you don't have just a big gray hair locks flowing down. Because it's, if I was just reading that on a resume, I would picture somebody that looks a whole lot older. So you started early, and it seems like you have a knack for kind of getting in places at the right time and doing well there.
I do. I say it's a great combination of luck and hard work. I mean, it's I work hard at what I do. I take it very seriously. Really love my job and my field. But I've also just been incredibly fortunate to have a lot of great people in my network who support me, who work with me, who feed me opportunities, and it's awesome.
The first topic I really wanted to cover, I think this will bring a lot of value to small businesses in particular, just branding and design, marketing, communications, and kind of media relations. It's something that isn't really on a lot of small businesses' radar, but I think that it probably should be. It's to some degree, So the first question is really, let's talk about the government buyers. So what's unique about government buyers, kind of as an audience?
So I think that one of the things that's really unique in the government space is the procurement process, right? There is this very specific procurement process that is technical in nature. And then I think that what happens is, because it is so technical in nature, people forget about the art of it. They forget that these are human beings that we're actually presenting to. And almost every procurement process that I've been a part of includes a panel. So there's like this fairness built into the process, which means that you're actually convincing a committee or a panel for what service they'll go with. And there's some subjectivity in that process. And I think that through that process, when you have a panel working, they're all usually reviewing reviewing proposals individually and then coming together to make a decision. A lot of times there's a scoring process, but that will actually include some nuances when they get together and discuss. And having a strong brand and a strong set of materials really is helpful in that process, because that brand that comes across in both your look and feel and your messaging is really important for swaying that procurement panel to say that, like, we are the most credible option, because you're not only being weighed on your technical aspects, but also your approach to the project. How are you delivering that message? How are you persuading that you actually have all of the expertise needed to be in that space? And one of the things that I think is really important to understand in the public sector is that there's this open records process, right? So all of these are submitted and they have to pass the smell test for the public. So if somebody has, materials that really helped you to feel credible, will help the public feel like, yes, it makes sense that they went with this company, is part of that process as well, because everything can be requested through public records. And so the way that everything is written is always scrutinized. Are you saying things that give people pause, or are you portraying yourself in a way that makes them feel like, oh yes, it absolutely makes sense that they went with this company? And everyone in the public sector is always thinking about that public scrutiny being a part of the process. So it's a different animal than just submitting a proposal and saying, like, we met all of the qualifications, or we're the cheapest, or something along those lines. It's really about how you're portraying all of the different things that are needed in that process.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's just the definition of intangible, because there's nowhere in the proposal or the RFQ where it's going to say, must have a visually stunning logo, or website must be, very user friendly, or anything like that. But those things will actually come in, those will have a psychological effect on the perception of a company. And I've had a few, not a lot, but I've had some customers that come to me to get a GSA contract, and I'm working along getting all the documents together, and I discover that I can't find a website. Maybe it's just one of those weird domains that goes on forever or something. Maybe there's like 5 dashes in it, and I email them or call them, and they say, oh yeah, we don't have a website. And then I'm like, well, nowadays you can't even really get a GSA contract without a website. Like, it's not going to be found in the documentation, but the GSA person that's reviewing it is going to come back and say, where's the website? I was trying to research the company. It's like, you're not real unless you have a website.
Absolutely. One of my favorite consultants when I was in the public sector told me that your brand is like your house, right? Your logo is just the front door. And it's great that it's appealing, but your brand is all of the elements of the house. And so you want people to come and feel welcome. You want them to know that you're real, right? You want them to know that you're performing consistently, and the website helps them to get that feel from you. It's an emotional process, branding. It's really about, like, how do you make your audience feel in every interaction that they have with you? And that may be from your materials, from your website, from your social media, and even from the interaction with your customer service. So when you have all of that aligned and working well, it just makes people feel really comfortable about working with you. And government is made of people too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a lot of great insights there that I hadn't even thought of. So I forget that you sat on the panels and you were involved in that. So it was really cool to hear a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. Now, as far as, like, think of a small business, they're trying to kind of maybe they're breaking into the government market, whether it's federal or state and local. But, one of the things, like getting a GSA contract, it's always nice because eBuy is a system that delivers RFQs that, so these opportunities are just kind of coming in a flow. But sometimes in a really niche company, like let's say it's, I don't know, plumbing equipment or something like that, there's not going to be a lot that comes in for plumbing equipment. So they're going to have to kind of penetrate a particular decision maker in each agency that they want to target. And that all kind of goes to the question that is very broad. I gave a very niche example, but a small business that's trying to kind of get into and target specific government contractors, how can they kind of get the right message to the right audience?
What's really important in the public sector is that you've got to kind of portray that you've done this before. Government, unfortunately, is not known for taking big risks, but there's a big reason for that. There's an expectation that you're spending public dollars responsibly, that you're not just kind of gambling with those public dollars. You have a responsibility when you're in the public sector to make sure that you're using every dollar responsibly and that you can show that you're doing that, right? And so when you are trying to break into that space, being able to align your message with very specifically what a contract or what a department is looking for will be really important for them to say, like, I can go with this company because they know this space. Now, if you're a new company and you may not have done these kinds of contracts as a company, my guess is you have done this kind of work either for other companies, and you can put that into a bio or a resume that shows your relevant experience. And having that relevant experience section that is beyond your current company shows that you've got the credibility. And I would say, you know, there's these 5 C's of communication, and everybody has them a little bit differently, but being consistent, showing that you've got this work and you've got a history in it, being clear, making that message and like really straightforward and easy to understand, having credibility, which is including that relevant experience, being very concise. This is what you want, and this is what I provide, making that connection, just really connecting the dots for people and being complete. So especially with RFPs, there's these technical requirements that you've got to show that you've read every single section of it and that you've responded to every single section of it so that they can match it up and know that they're going to get a complete solution from you. So really like doing your homework, reading the RFP, doing a little homework on the department and in the industry in general will help you align more, because they're going to notice those keywords and that lingo that they're using. If those are all in your proposals, then it's like, yes, they get me, they hear me, they understand me, and that's what I need.
Definitely. Very cool. Let's move into the second topic, which is kind of on the lines of strategic planning and performance analytics. And this is kind of, I think, the next level, you know, and I think it speaks volumes that you offer this. It's kind of like, you know, we do this stuff for you, but we're also going to measure and show you if we're doing a good or bad job. So there's you're very brave to do that.
I love performance analytics. I'm a big data geek.
Yeah, same here. I measure everything in my company, and I'm taking a machine learning data analysis kind of like small course right now, and that's really fun. Just kind of seeing how to use computers to kind of dive in even more. So yeah, there's so many good tools nowadays. It's amazing. Well, yeah, the first, really, I just wanted to go on a like very surface level. What are the benefits of strategic planning for a government contractor?
So I always say that what we do is we and the work and then work the plan. I love to actually plan out, and our strategic plans are very detailed in the sense that we will not only kind of have the strategic foundation for your message and your audience and what your objectives are, but then we'll take the extra step to decide what are our key performance indicators, what does success look like in the end, and then we'll create an action plan, which is the meat of a strategic plan, is those tactics really. So we want to set those up so that we've got a year-long usually plan that decides what are the steps that we're taking, what's the biggest priority, because if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. So we really want to be specific about what we're doing first, what's the highest level stuff, and what are the lower level things, and then planning that out through the year. And then when we move into implementation, we simply work the plan. And the plan is great as a roadmap, right? However, it doesn't always go exactly as planned. And so having your key performance indicators set in advance lets you know, are you meeting these? And if you're not, what can we adjust to do better? So for me, that optimization process is the key for performance analytics. Just knowing how you're doing is not enough if you're not using that data and then optimizing all the way through your campaign or all the way through the year, so that you're using like a continuous improvement philosophy to take the data and tweak it, take the data, tweak your campaign, take the data and tweak your campaign. And this should be happening on an ongoing basis, at the very least a month.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I guess going below the surface on that, do you have any kind of specific tips you can give a small business that, you know, can't sign on to a $10,000 a month software suite for analytics? I mean, at the very minimum, just open up a spreadsheet, type in some KPIs that you think might be useful. KPI, when I working in government, I always try to explain acronyms. So key performance indicators. But yeah, can you explain, I guess, if you're comfortable with it, going into maybe even a specific case study with a customer? You don't have to name names if that, would cross the line, but, kind of how you set that up specifically. I think a lot of small businesses that haven't thought of things from the data side and want to are starting to see kind of like, oh, if I measured that, then I would know if I'm like driving my business off a cliff, or if I should turn around and head to good harvest somewhere. But how can a company isolate the best KPIs quickly? How often should they go back and take a look at the KPIs and say, this one actually isn't telling me much, but if I change course to this other KPI, that would?
So I think that, it's nice to have some indicators, right? We call them key performance indicators because they're not the final objective, and usually it takes longer to get to the final objective. And I'll give you a great example. When I was at the Port of San Diego, I was working on a campaign that we called That's My Bay. It was an environmental water quality campaign for San Diego Bay that was all about people how to take care of their bay by giving environmental and anti-pollution prevention tips, we called them. So it's anti-littering, waste diversion, recycling, zero waste, all of the things that we know improve water quality, taking those best practices and putting them into little short, fun videos that we once had a judge on a panel call them snack size tips. And it was terrific because each video featured a character and one tip. And the way that we got to that campaign is we worked really closely with the water quality department and the environmental specialists, and we started talking about compliance, right? And so their goal was to meet their compliance goals for having less trash in the outfalls that go into the bay, right? And so then we started talking about our purpose instead of our compliance goals, right? And that is that we want good water quality regardless of what the regulations say we need there. And so we really we want, everyone to care about water quality in the bay and make the connection between their actions and what's happening in the bay as far as water quality is concerned. And so we came up with these objectives for compliance, right? Which is the amount of trash that's in each outfall. But then we also have them analyze that trash, and it's like cans were a big one, bags were a big one, chip bags were a big one, right? And so when we develop our videos, each one featured one of those items and an alternative behavior that we would like. So for our key performance indicators, the things that we could measure along the way, it was how many people are watching these videos to the end, right? Because that way they're getting the entire tip. And then for our actual measurement objectives that are happening like annually, it was how much trash is being measured in those outfalls and is it decreasing overall. So as a marketing campaign, I can't really say, I can reduce the amount of trash, but I can reduce the behaviors and increase the amount of people that are being exposed to the best practices that we want them to. So really separating those out from the beginning and then measuring over time, right? It's like these videos are doing well. This particular character, not as much. There was conflict in that particular video, and it rubbed people a little the wrong way. So we removed those ones and we focused more on the positive messaging that was there. And so over time, we had all of these indicators for the cost per mil or the number of impressions that each video got, how many watching the video to the end. And then at the year measurement, where they're actually measuring the outfalls and they're measuring the amount of trash in the parks along the bay, that's when we see the actual decrease. And there was like an 11% decrease in the year of the campaign, the first year of the campaign. So we were super excited, and it ranged from like 7 to 11%. But I think it's having those measurements up front, knowing what your indicators are, that you're making progress and you're making inroads in that area. And then the final is, how are you actually performing in the end. And obviously there's a lot more that goes into that trash from the operational side as well. But because we're working together so closely, we can say that, like we're actually making progress as a team. So knowing what you are able to affect and how it works with a bigger picture is going to be key for measuring and showing progress to your potential clients in the future and for success in your current contracts.
Yeah, that's a great example. And congratulations on the success. 11% in a year is, that's big.
It was, yeah.
The other thing that I've noticed when I started measuring everything and started communicating it to my team, KPIs became kind of these little energizers throughout my organization where it kind of picks your head up and, instead of just grinding away for 8 hours a day, you take breaks and you see what you're kind of like rowing towards, and you row together and you actually talk about, you strategize, this isn't working. The numbers are the same. And, we need to talk about that, try some new experiments. So it really does energize an organization. And, and I think it makes people happier, and it gives them more purpose where they're working, because you could take someone who just sees their job as, I show up, I file papers, someone tells me to do something, I do it, and then I go home, and sometimes they hand me a paycheck and I like that day. To, I show up and we critically think on how to decrease the trash that goes into our bay so that the people that live around us can enjoy the bay more and enjoy better water and all that stuff. So it kind of like brings everybody's head up from the desk to really see what they're doing.
Absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right about it gives you a little motivational pep, right? Like gives you a little boost when you see the numbers, and it makes you want to dig in when it's not what you expected. It's like, hey, look, like this one's lower than these other three. Let's figure out what it is about this video that's not as well, and make sure that we're tweaking future ones to be in this top category instead of this lower one. And it's really, I think, team building, but also it makes you more productive when you're excited to like kind of see your success happen. And you asked a question about what are some ways to not spend $10,000 on analytics specifically, and yeah. One of the things that we talk about is first party data is your gold, right? Like you actually have the access to your own data. You have your own website analytics. You have your own social media analytics. You have even things like putting measurements in place for what are your inquiries coming in, and like working with a company right now about like what are the industries that you're having the most success with, not just like, hey, we're having this great success with people downloading our app, but who's downloading it, right? And you probably have access to that information, and are you taking the time to put together something that says like you're in this industry, so that then we can measure and use that data, use that first party, your own data to say, look, you're having the most success with this industry. Let's gear our campaigns toward that and maximize that potential. So really your first party data and setting it up. And I mean, it's very simple things. Like if you've got an intake form, right? Do you have an industry drop down on there so that you can say, this is the industry that's working best for me. So for a government contract, right? It might be like, we actually have way more luck with water districts than we do with cities and counties, because they're using this, or they're in a time of doing a ton of work in this space. So then you gear your campaigns towards reaching out to more water districts, right? So just having that ability to be able to segment what's working and what's not is really terrific. And we use Data Studio through Google to connect all of our different data sources onto one dashboard that can automatically update pretty quickly. And it's really inexpensive to use your own data. Third-party data is super expensive. Even creating a survey is mid-level. So just using the data that you have available to you is always probably one, the most valuable, and two, the least expensive.
Great suggestions there. And yeah, another added bonus that you just kind of hinted at is like you had a lot of success in that project with the Port Authority there. And you can now, take that experience and not just list the attributes, but also the KPIs, the landmarks and the statistics that you succeeded at. It wasn't just a mildly successful campaign. It was a very successful campaign that exceeded what you even expected it to from the get-go. So when you hand in a proposal to a panel to review, if your capability statement not just lists, I did this for the Army, I did this for the Navy, but also says, finished project in 85% of estimated time, came in X dollars or X percent under budget. If you have these KPIs, and it not only does it show that you're very effective in what you do, but you're next level and you track everything really well. And that right there shows that you're not an organization that just runs around like chickens with their heads cut off, solving problems, putting out fires all the time, but you put out the fires before they even pop up.
Absolutely. And those stats are really an important part of that credibility piece that we were talking about. Almost all contracts need to go through some sort of vetting process beyond the selection committee. So they'll make a selection, it's usually a recommendation, and then that needs to be approved by city council, a board of commissioners, or even just an internal process with an executive team. And if they've got some stats in there that show like, okay, we're going to be able to measure and know if this was successful, really helps with that public scrutiny process, so that you are able to show that like we know how to bring results and we know how to deliver them in a way that you can use to support your decision-making process.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I did a post a while back just researching into contracting officers, just kind of like what are the attributes of a contracting officer with the government, and just found that, they all large part, like over 60 or 70% are, have a college degree. I think over 90% have a bachelor's, but somewhere around 50% are at the master's level. Most of them MBAs. They've been working for a while. They're kind of a jack of all trades. I mean, they can sit down and read a very dry package of documents, but they'll also do research on industries and products and learn technical aspects as well. So just the personality profile of them. And this is an opinion, but I think it's based on logic, including KPIs and not just listing your past performance, but including that next level data in there. You're speaking their language when you do that.
Absolutely.
And when you couple that with really good branding and a website that's easy to navigate and zips around a little bit, maybe not too much, but is easy to navigate and it's out there, then a small business or a small to medium can legitimately compete with a larger company. And that's where a lot of small businesses say, well, it's all, everything's stacked against us. It's kind of like you have to kind of act like you're a large business in a couple ways to show them that you're just as credible, or at least credible enough to take a chance on. But you can't not have a website and hand in your proposal on like a wadded up napkin. That's not gonna fly.
I think too, one of the things that we run into often is that it's kind of, I'm an expert in this, right? I'm an expert in providing, event services, or I'm an expert in, managing sustainable events, or I'm an expert in just, like any different space that you're an expert in. You're like, I know this, right? And then there's this whole marketing and communications component that you're trying to add on top of that, right? And or this whole procurement process that you're trying to add. And it's kind of like, well, I don't want to learn to be an expert in something else. I don't have time for that, right? And I know what I do, and I know what I do well. And so I think that it's really about like finding somebody who can support you in the ways that complement where you're an expert. So I joke that, like I am an in communications. However, I'm not a tech expert, right? And so I can dabble in Google Analytics, but after that, I'm like, can somebody else set up my Zaps for me? Somebody else set up my do my troubleshooting if something's not connected correctly. I'm going to spend way too much time trying to figure it out. So I'm going to go to an expert in that. And so it's just kind of what you are an expert in, and then letting somebody else help you with defining that, because that's what they're an expert in, right? So I think it's really important that we kind of work together to find what each other's expertise are, and then create some partnerships, and really work together collaboratively to say, like, here's what my expertise, here's your expertise. Let's make sure that you're doing what you need, working in your genius, right? Like,
Yeah.
working in your field of expertise, and then let me support with where I've spent my 25-year career to say, like, hey, I got this part down.
That's great. Well, yeah, I kind of wanted to wrap everything up talking about public affairs and community outreach. Probably two things that a lot of small businesses think, that's not for me. Lockheed probably has a 100-person department for public affairs and another department for community outreach. But a small business, we're just day to day and trying to make it and grow. So let's talk about how those kind of areas can help a small business and kind of have that impact in winning government contracts.
So I think this is all about like winning support, right? It's really about getting in front of the people who can advocate for you, and who are interested in making sure that you are a part of their organization. So when you think about the public affairs side specifically, like I said, almost every contract goes through this vetting process, and so the final contract, it will need to get through a city council. It will need to get through a legislative body of some sort. A lot of times. And so having legislative support from, elected and appointed officials who know your company, who you have a good reputation with, is really important. Making sure that they understand the contract so that they're comfortable passing it when the time comes, and getting a yes vote from that legislative body is really helpful. And a public affairs specialist will know exactly what they need to hear, how busy they are, and how to get just the highlights to them so that we can get that support. And the reason we talk about these things and legislative affairs or public affairs and community outreach together is that we want to do the same thing with the community, because these appointed and elected officials are going to want to represent how their community feels. And so if you've not got community support, it makes it really hard for a legislator to say, well, I'm supporting this despite my community not supporting it. And so making sure that the community understands like what's happening during the timeline of your projects, being able to show that, like, hey, we were working in lockstep with the community, answering their questions, providing them with information in advance, using channels that worked well for them so that they are all comfortable knowing what's happening and that they had access to somebody to answer questions. So then it's really easy for a legislator to say, like, yes, this is a company that gets it, that knows that the community and the public is important, and we're here to serve them. So these are all wrapped together, and having somebody that's really kind of focusing on that, thinking about it, and helping you get there is, I think, incredibly helpful.
Yeah, especially in today's day and age where protests are so common. If you've invested the time and effort to gain the trust of the buying party, the council, the panel, if you have that capital built with them, then when the protests come in, they are much more likely to fight it out for you rather than going with the company that's protesting and just kind of letting the loudest dog that's barking win the job.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And those protests are common either from other companies or from the public, that it says, like, hey, we've had a bad experience here, or we're upset that you're not thinking about this. And so really taking the time to think through what those are in advance and addressing them in your proposals. Like right now, we also are a small business that is sending proposals to government right now, right? And so in our proposals, we're including things like, here's our inclusivity plan. This is how we make sure that we're thinking about how we're inclusive. This is our environmental impact plan. This is how we make sure that we are operating in a way that is as sustainable as possible, so that when the time comes, you've already thought through that. And when the questions start to come, you can say, yes, I have a plan for that. And so really making sure that that's coming across, and that you're thinking through those different things that governments are really expected to think about and to make sure that they're including in their decision-making process. You can say, yes, I've got those in my plan as well.
Great. Well, That's about all I've got, Rebecca. Thanks so much for talking to me today. If somebody wants to get in touch with you for whether it's branding and design, media relations, public affairs, strategic planning, how would somebody get in touch with you?
We have a website, axiomofpurpose.com, nice and easy, just Axiom of Purpose. And that website also has email address and phone on it, a contact form. We're on social at Axiom of Purpose, so we make it nice and easy for people to find us any way that they need to.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and have a great day. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh.
Thanks for watching our video. Make sure you subscribe and check this video out. If you liked this video, this one's for you.